We'll do the 12th mimer in Mamori Mulakotim Cheli Gimel. The mimer Balilah Hu Nodeda Shnas HaMelech, which the Rebbe said on Purim in the year Tavshin Chof Hei. When it says here that this mimer was later on printed for the Purim days in Purim Tavshin Nun, they made a kuntres, a booklet from this mimer, and the date over there is 11th of Adar Shnas Tavshin Nun, and they printed this mimer in honor of the Purim. So we'll do the mimer now. Balilah ההוא נדדה שnas המלך. So on that night, the sleep of the king was disturbed. So basically, the story in the Megillah is that everything was being planned by Haman and Achashverosh, and on that particular night, the miracle started to happen. Things turned about. It starts with Balilah ההוא נדדה שnas המלך. At that night, the king's sleep has been disturbed. So the Rebbe says, "V'tzorich lahavin." We need to understand. Oimrei balilah ההוא. Why is he saying here on that night? Balilah ההוא. Should it l'chayre? Should have gam k'shahaya oimer balilah stam. Even if it would have just said Balilah nodeda shnas hamelech, just said that at the night, hoyu yoidim shekoyi al halayla, we would know that this is referring. Which night is this? The night sheba hoyu hamu urois hakesuvim bepsukim shalufonov, in which the happenings that is written in the psukim beforehand, in which Achashverosh invited both Queen Esther together with invited Haman for the party. And Balilah, this happened on that night, so we don't have to say on that night. It's the night when the psukim that they discusses there. So why does it say Balilah ההוא? The Rebbe is going to explain. Laila is nighttime, is darkness, is exile. It represents a lack of seeing Hashem's presence. The word ההוא is an additional darkness. When you say who, that's nistar. Ato is noichach, which means he is when the person is not present. You say he said so. When the person is present, you say you said so. So to say that the Shekhinah is distance, it was Balilah and it was ההוא. As the Rebbe is going to bring out, sometimes there is a level of double sleep, like a tardema, or sometimes the person is so asleep that he doesn't even realize. Sometimes you have a dream, and sometimes you think it's true, the dream. Not only you have the dream, but you think it's true. It's a double. It's Balilah ההוא. Let's see what the Rebbe explains. Yes, levair zeh, so we can explain this. Based on what my father-in-law, the Rebbe, says, with the mimer that started with this. And the Rebbe brings down in note 2 over here, this was in the year Tavshin, was the first mimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe said when he came the second time to America to settle over here. In the year Tavshin, that is when the Rebbe gave this mimer of Balilah ההוא in that year. So over there it brings down the Isa b'minhagei Maharil, that we find in the customs of the Maharil that the Balilah ההוא tzarich lagbiya es koile b'kriyosei, that once you come to this pasuk Balilah ההוא, you need to raise your voice when you read it. And the reason why, lifi shezehu iker hanes, because that's the main nes. Why is this the main nes? So the Rebbe explains in the Maimer that actually when it says the balilah hu nodda shnas hamelech, it's going on the Eibishter. So the Eibishter decided at that time the nodda shnas hamelech to intervene and save the Yidden. So he explains in the Maimer Alpi Mashe Kosu Yalkut, according to what it's written in the Yalkut Shimoni on the pasuk. The Nodda Shnas HaMelech ze Malkei Shalolim. What does it mean? The sleep of the king was disturbed. We're talking about the king of the world. We're talking about Hashem. The Keshe Yisrael Heim B'matzav Shel Shino. What does it mean that the sleep, Hashem is asleep? So we say, when Yidden are asleep, that's Kavayachol makes it as if the Eibishter is asleep. The Keshe Yisrael, Heim b'matzav shel shino, when the Yidden are in a condition, in a situation that they're asleep, Nasek shino Kavayachol b'malka shel olam. So to speak, the king of the world also becomes asleep. As the pasuk says, Ani Yishena. So that's a pasuk in Yeshira Shirim, that I am asleep, meaning that the Yidden are on a level of asleep. Level of asleep means they're not awake to do the service of Hashem. When you're asleep, you're not functioning the way we should. So, Ani Yishena. And the Zohar explains this, that this is Bigolusa. In Golus, when the Yidden are in Golus, they're asleep. Hashina the Yisrael Bisman HaGolus, through the sleep of the Yidden in the time of exile. So then they also bring about the sleep of Lamailo, Kaviyach Lamailo. They sort of cause a sleep, so to speak, above. So the situation of the Shina Lamaila comes from the condition of the Yidden Shina Lamato, of the sleep below. As the Rebbe brings down in the note, that Take Ani Yishena could mean I am asleep, it's going on Knesset Yisrael, but there's also Ani Yishena Kaviyachol, that this is talking L'gabi Mailo, Ani Yishena, that Hashem, so to speak, is asleep. So now we understand that the fact that that night the sleep of the king has been disturbed, that's the main of the Nes. Because Laila Huzman Hagos. Laila, when it says here that it was the Laila, that's the time of Golus. That's when they were asleep. During the Golus, as we said before. That's, so to speak, the time when above Kaviyachol, when Hashem is sort of asleep. And this is what we're saying. On that night, during the Golus, so disturbed, the king's sleep was disturbed. That's why you ikra shel nes. That's why it's the main part of the nes, because we're saying that the Malkus Shalolim is getting up from the sleep, from the condition of the Shina Lamailo, not the Dosh Nasamel. So now the Rebbe explains the specific language of the pasuk Balailo Hahu. Could have just said Balailo. Now we explain Balailo means Golus. So it says Balailo Hahu. That seems to magnify and increase the level of Golus Hahu. Because who is Loshen Nister. Who is a language of obscure? He that it's not in front, it's hidden. Moire al Helem, that points to obscurity. So we have here 2 times obscurity. Shnei pamim hester. Laila v'hu, balaila hu, and Laila and who and he in obscurity. Shanoi savala helem v'hester, the golus Laila v'chlal, in addition to the blockage and the obscurity of generally that it's golus, it's Laila b'Laila, which in general hineos. It was more than just Balaila, it was more than just golus. Then b'meach hashveirish, that block, that hide, that hidden of the godliness was even more. Hester kofel, it was a doubled Hester. So like we also find in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Esther min ha-Torah minayin. Where do we find Esther? From the Torah. And the Gemara brings the pasuk, V'anoichi haster, Aster. It's Esther. But there is a double Hester that the pasuk says. And I will hide 2 times, Haster, Aster. That means that in the times of Achashverosh, in addition to the Hester of Golus, it was also the Aster. It was a low, very low situation for the Golus over there. Api Toiras Habal Shem Tov. Then there is also, according to the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, the Pirush Haster Aster, what he explains. It's not just 2 Hesters, but Haster, Aster, Shtei Pamim, that you're blocking the Hester. Not only it is Hester, but the Hester is blocked. Shtei Pamim, Shah Hester hu muster, that the hidden is blocked. So based on that teaching by Baal Shem Tov, Yesh Loimar, we can say, Shekein hu gam hapirush de balaila hahu. This is also the meaning, the interpretation of balaila hahu. Balaila is hahu. Shalaila the golus hu ba'ofen the hu, which is Hester. That the night of golus is in a way of hu, balaila, that is hidden. What does it mean that the golus itself is Hester? The golus of is Hester. Meaning you don't even realize that it's a golus. It's such a golus. There's a block, and that block is blocked that you don't even realize. That means that you don't feel that the exile is nighttime and darkness. As the pasuk says, Somim choshech la'or, in Yeshaya Perikei pasuk Chof, that they make like darkness is light. Somim choshech la'or. So not only is it choshech, but they such a golus that they're saying that it's not even choshech, that it's oir. Because of medayik, and the top pasuk specifically says balilah hahu nodda melech. What the pasuk is trying to emphasize over here, that it was a double. It was laila hahu. The laila was also in a way of hahu nodda melech. The sleep of the king has been disturbed. Lahadgish yoser goydel v'toikev hanes, to emphasize the more and the force of the Nes. The Nes and the force of the Nes was because, notwithstanding the fact that it was such a dark situation, but the miracle changed it all around. Even though that the sleep of the Yidden at that point was total asleep. What does it mean, total asleep? This is similar. We find language of Shino, then we find Tardema. Tardema means that totally sleep. Spindler explained elsewhere the difference between Shino and Tardema, the difference between sleep and fast asleep. If you're asleep, you know that the dream is a dream. You realize that it's a dream. Shehu sheker, which is false. Those who are nirdomim, fast asleep, as they think the falsehood is true. They think what they're dreaming, they think that's true. That's a tardim. Because when Yidden are in that level of a tardema in balilah, who this affects, causes a shino, such as sleep that it should be totally distant, totally asleep. And yet the sleep of the king was disturbed. The Malkush Aloilo, the king of the world, not only so that even this sleep. So here it doesn't say this Shnas HaMelech, the sleep of the king, that not only did he get up from the Tardema, but he got up from the sleep even. Just the sleep alone. That's why it's not nodda the tardema, but the Shnas HaMelech. So say if he just wakes up from the tardema, but possibly you can say he's still asleep. But we're saying no, even this regular sleep he nodda, which means a totally change around, and Hashem's presence is coming back in full force. Base. So continues in the previous mimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe said in Tovshin when he first mimer when he came to the United States. That is why is it? How did it happen? That on that, under those great obscurity, the Shnas HaMelech was disturbed. The king of the world, Hashem, it was disturbed. Ikerana is the Purim, which is the main miracle of Purim, as quoted from the Maharil. And in the Gemara, Tokfashal Nesas, the Rebbe brings in the Horus. Nase alidei hamesiris nefesh the Yisrael b'meshach kol hashana. That became through the self-sacrifice of the Yidden during the entire year, in which the Yidden stood in a level that it didn't even enter Machshavas Chutz. They were with Mesiris Nefesh. That brought about the Nodda Shnas HaMelech. Tzorich lahovin. So we need to understand what is this special idea that Rebbe asks of Nodda Shnas HaMelech, that it was disturbed. Okay, if the Yidden did tshuva, they stood with Mesiris Nefesh all year, so then they deserve, they're not asleep, so they deserve the presence of the king. Why does it have to be waking up Shnas HaMelech? Why does it have to be disturbed? Tzorich love, we need to understand, at the time that they didn't do Hashem's will, so then also because of the order of Ishtalshlus, neither that is his sleep nor slumber, the guardian of Yisrael, Hashem doesn't sleep. So since the Yidden stood with self-sacrifice during the entire year, Mahu Hanei. So what is this such a miracle? The Yisayrim is at Toikefanes, and then we say this is the force of the miracle. The king's sleep has been disrupted, but that's the natural result of Mesiras Nefesh, of Teshuvah from the Yidden, to have the Eberster doesn't. Why do we have to sort of Nodda Shnas HaMelech? And also we need to understand the association between Achashverosh sleep, the literal meaning of balilah, ההוא, Nodda Shnas HaMelech, it goes on Achashverosh, to the nodeda shnas hamelech for malchus shel olam for Hashem. Also need to understand the pirush balilah hahu nodeda shnas hamelech lifi pshutei. The simple meaning that the king's sleep was disrupted, literally in the pshat. Shekoyel hamelech Achashverosh, that goes on King Achashverosh. Who and what happened? What happened? Why did his sleep get this thing? What is the pashut pshat? The things that happened in that night caused that the king's sleep was disrupted. He read, he couldn't sleep. He was worried about what the Haman was plotting to come in with Achashverosh over there. So there is a reason that the nodeda shnas hamelech. But there has to be a similar reason. The nodeda shnas hamelech malchus shel olam is something happened. B'pia yadua shonyonim delamato mishtalshlim inyonim l'mayla. That the matters below, they evolve, and they come from the matters the way they're above. Move on, it's understood the kamoy kain hu benegei lazed that this also applies. Likewise, it's as it relates to this shenodeda shnas hamelech malchus shel olam, that when we talk about the king of the world, his sleep was disrupted, disturbed. Shaha'inyan de balilah hahu, that which took place, the matters of that laila, who shegorim li yesh nodeda shnas hamelech. That is what caused to be nodeda shnas hamelech. Just like with pastures, the king was disrupted from what had took place. That same thing is above. But here we need to understand in the spiritual context, if the Yidden were asleep and it was Balayla in Golus, I mean, why would the Malchus shel olam sleep? Why would it be interrupted? The tzarich lo of it. Haray laila hahu moire kinal sif aleph al hahelem v'hahester v'goydloi laila hahu points, as we said in sif aleph, on the total obscurity and how great goydloi, how big the obscurity is. Laila hahu, which is hepech ha'inyan, which is just the opposite of the idea. Shalayla hahu, maybe Sheyiya nodeda shnas hamelech malchus shel olam, that the laila hahu should bring to the fact that the king's sleep should be disturbed, the malchus shel olam, because of balayla hahu. Balayla hahu essentially means that it's obscurity. There's a blockage. There's no gilelikus. Why would laila hahu bring to nodeda shnas hamelech? As we say in the story by Achashverosh, it brought to the nodeda shnas hamelech. But above in the spiritual realms, why would laila hahu to bring to the level of nodeda shnas hamelech? Gimel. So we'll understand it by first introducing that which is explained in Torah in the Memorim of Purim. Ubarucha bedrush admur ha'emtzoi, and at length in the Maimer of the Mitler Rebbe. The Biyoim, which is Gilui, that when we talk about day, which is revealed, when it's light, Ubalayla, when we talk at nighttime, when it's dark, Hela, when it's hidden, B'chol echad mehem, in each one, yesh shnei ha'inyonim nigilu v'helam. In each one of them, there is revealed and hidden. In Yoim, there is gilu and helam, and Balayla, there is gilu and helam. Bezehu, what this explains, Shalepa'omim ksiv Yoim hazeh, sometimes it says Yoim hazeh, Dezeh moire al gilu. When you say zeh, this, you point with your finger. It's like ato, it's benoichat, it's here. So that's gilui. So we say the yoim is hazeh, the yoim is begilui. Ulipamim ksiv yoim hahu. and sometimes it says that day, which is Nistar. The who moira al helam, who points to hidden kiniskala, I said before. The same thing we find by Laila. The Phorim ksiv Laila hazeh, which is a greater, which is a revelation within Laila. It's a gilu within Laila. The Phorim ksiv Laila hahu, which is a lack of gilu even in Laila. What's the point of the explanation as understood from these Maimorim? The achiluk ben yom v'laylo hu bahem ba'atzmo. So what's the difference when we say yom and laylo? Then we have within it gilu noir. So when we talk about yom v'laylo, the difference is in them themselves. The yom hu oir, yom is light. V'laylo choshech, and night is darkness. As the pasuk says, "Vayikra likim la'oir yom." So yom is the light is yom. V'lachoshech, and darkness korolaylo, darkness is light. That's number one. But then there's a second. And there's also another difference in which how the day and how the night, how the darkness and how the light, if they come out in a way of revelation, then it's zeh, halaylo hazeh, hayoyim hazeh, or it's in a way of hidden, which is who. So what does it mean, the zeh, or who? So he says the loshon zeh b'negei liyom v'layla. When it says the loshon of zeh, as it relates to the day and the night, moire al hayom v'halaylo k'moi shenimshu chulamato begilui. When we say yom or layla hazeh, when we use it the zeh with yom layla, that points to the day and the night as they have been drawn down below openly. The yom is zeh or the layla is zeh, comes out begilui. Veloshin who, when it says who, moira al hayom v'halaylo k'moshe be'etzem. That points to the way they are, in essence, the way they are. Lifnei shenimshechu begilu, before they extended the gilu. So the yom v'halaylo is the mocker, the way they are there, and whether it's zeh or who is as it comes down in this world. Ulamayla yosef. And also, Yom v'laylo is a before they were nimshal begilu, and even higher k'moshehem b'shorsham, as they are in their root, not just before they are coming down below, but actually in a higher place, not only as they were before they come down begilu, but the way they are in their source. And this is why in the redemption of Exodus of Egypt it says, "Be'etzem hayoyim hazeh yotzu kol tzivos havayim eretz Mitzrayim." So over here the pasuk says hayoyim hazeh. In the middle of this day, so the day became hazeh, came down lamata. Yotzu kol tzivos havayim eretz Mitzrayim. All the armies of Hashem went out of Egypt. V'chein b'toyra mitzvahs, and also the same thing is when we talk about now, in the time before the times of La'asid Lovei, but during the present time, is when we talk about Torah mitzvahs, k'moshehem achshav, the way we do them now. Ksiv hayoim hazeh Hashem elokecha mitzavcha goymer. This day God commands you, which is the way it comes down into this world. But when we talk about the redemption of the future, over there the pasuk says, "V'omar bayoim hahu," on that day. So the bayoim is going to be hahu because it's not going to be begilui. Because what revelation did we experience when the redemption of Yitzias Mitzrayim? That is revealing the light as it comes down below. That's why it's Yoim Hazeh. Said Be'etzem Hayoim Hazeh. Hazeh meaning the Gilui came down. Hazeh. Ubegulo ha'asida. Yia Gilui Etzem Hoyer. But in the future redemption, over there, it's going to be revelation of the essence of the Oir. Not the Gilui of there, but the Oir Be'etzem. As the Oir stands beyond being extended and revealed. And that too will come down in the revelation. It'll be Yom Hahu, that Hahu, that will be the Gilui of the Etzem Hoyer. In Ois Taled, the Rebbe is going to continue to say that just like we had the two madreges of Hahu and Zeh in the level of Oir, that the level of Yoim Hazeh, that's the level of the Oir that can come down Begilui. And in the Geula Hasidah will get the level that comes down in the level of Bayoim Hahu. The same thing is in the level of Choshech. We also have the level of Hahu, which is in Choshech itself, he more hidden. And we have the level of Balilah Hazeh, in which it's the Hamshocha from the Laila. But Hamshocha that is Shayches to Gilui from the Laila. The Rebbe brings out that when it talks about Laila, the Hamshocha of Hahu is lower than the Hamshocha of Hazeh. By Yoim, the Hamshocha of Hahu is a higher level in Yoim, because that's the earth that doesn't come down the Gilui. But when we talk about Laila, the Hamshocha of Hahu is on a lower level because it comes down from the Esem HaChoshech. Let's look inside. Dalet. The same thing, similar is as far as the night, as far as the Yom Hazeh and Yom Hahu. So we have Bechlal, the level of Choshech in of itself. Darkness, meaning it's beyond light. Within light, we also have the two, but Choshech is higher than Oir. It's higher than the essence of Oir, so it's even higher than Bayoim Hahu, and in the highest level, the Shoresh of Oir, but the level of Choshech comes first. That's a place where there is Bechlal not Oir, it's totally hidden. The Choshech Atzmoi, so what do we have the two madrigas? The Choshech Atzmoi Lifnei Shenimshech Begilui, when the Choshech itself, before it comes out openly, Ukamoish Kol Shekain Kamoish Shehu B'Shorshei, and as we said, there's before the Gilui, and then the way it's in its root. Nikra Laila Hahu, that's called Laila Hahu, which is an Choshech, which is not Shayach Lidei Gilui. It's before it's Nimshech Begilui, or it's the Shorshei, which is in the essence of the Choshech. Because Nimshech Lemato, but when it comes down below, Nikra Laila Hazeh, then it's called Laila Hazeh. It's a level of Gilui from the Choshech that comes down. But when we talked about Yoim, Hazeh was a lower level than Hahu in Oir. But when we talk about Choshech, Hahu is the lower level. But as it relates to Laila, Laila Hahu Hulamatum Laila Hazeh. When we say that night is lower than Laila Hazeh, why? The Kivon Shachoshech the Laila Shalamaila Ma'oir, because the darkness of the Laila, which is higher than Oir, who Hasherish V'Hasiba Shal Yidei Zeh Nasa Choshech Kipshutei. That is the root and the reason why there is actually Laila, why there is actually darkness. It's because of the higher level. Lochein, and therefore Hahelem V'Hahester, Choshech Kipshutei. So therefore the literal darkness, the block, the obscurity, Shenase al Yidei Hamshochas Etzem HaChoshech Shelamayla, when you bring down the essence of the Choshech above, which is Laila Hahu, who Choshech Godel Yoser Ma Choshech Shenase, that's a greater darkness. When you get the essence of the Choshech down, it's a lower and it's a greater darkness. Yoser Ma Choshech Shenase, greater than the darkness that becomes Al Yidei Hamshochas HaChoshech, about the Hazeh Choshech, Laila Hazeh, the Hamshochas HaChoshech, Moshe Baba Hamshocha, as it comes by Hamshocha, Laila Hazeh. Because the Laila Hazeh, when it comes from the Choshech, from Laila Hazeh, that's the Laila can come down in Oifn Hamshocha, Ushahalaylo Boifn the Zeh. So now the Laila is still Zeh, it's somewhat of a Hamshocha. Shenirgash Begilui. That it's felt openly. It's a Choshech that you can point to. It's Zeh. It's such a revelation when it comes a Laila Hazeh that you can say Zeh, Shu Laila. But the Laila Hahu is a level of darkness who shall Laila ba'oifon the Hester. In the Laila's Hester, it's total darkness. Ein nirgash hu Laila. You don't feel that it's Laila. So that in this case, the Laila Hazeh is a higher level than Laila Hahu, because the Laila Hahu is a more powerful darkness. In the level of Oir Yom Hazeh and Yom Hahu, over there the Yom Hahu is a higher Madrege in Oir. But here it's a higher Madrege in darkness, and therefore it's a more darkness. So therefore it's lower the Halayla Hahu than Halayla Hazeh.